actually hitting me this morning because there's this weird kind of electricity in the air right now. Like the world is loud, but it's also hollow. Like everybody's yelling, nobody's steering, and the things that used to be solid are starting to feel like cardboard. So I'm watching the headlines, right? Iran running drills and temporarily restricting parts of the Strait of Hormuz, that little narrow throat that the world's energy moves through, right? And then I'm seeing the government shutdown mess, right? Where the machine of our country keeps grinding, but the leadership feels like it's off playing musical chairs while, all of us, are living under the consequences. And while that's happening, regular families are still trying to we're still trying to do normal life, right? We got to get the kids to school. We got to pay bills, keep food in the fridge, keep the peace at home, keep anxiety from becoming the atmosphere in our houses. So I'm sitting here thinking, man, this isn't just politics. No, this is a safety conversation. It's a responsibility conversation. This is a what kind of man are you going to be when the world is chaotic conversation. And, this one's not just for men either, because, women feel this too. I don't know, maybe even more. Women can feel the instability, the threat, the uncertainty, the sense that something isn't right. And women, they want safety. They want the world to make sense. They want to know that there's a plan. And the ugly truth is that in times like this, you find out real quick who's awake and who's been hypnotized. And I want to get this straight. I don't mean woke, okay? I mean awake. There is a difference, right? Because if you're woke, that's just a script. And being awake is living in reality, right? I mean, woke is just repeating what the crowd tells you to repeat. And awake is seeing what's in front of your face, and then you just act like an adult. So let me weave this together in the way that it keeps weaving together in my head, because it's like the same theme showing up in just different disguises, right? You got Iran touching a global choke point, right? That's leverage. It's a reminder that choke points exist and that they do get used. It's a reminder that the world is not a daycare. It's a reminder that threats, they don't always announce themselves with a siren. Sometimes they just quietly rest a hand on a switch and then they wait for you to panic. A shutdown, right? Like the government shutdown, that's a different kind of choke point. It's not a shipping lane. It's literally institutional stability. It's the slow leak of our trust. It's when the systems that you assumed would work slow down, stall out, they degrade, and then they just get weird. And then there's the choke point inside of your own house, inside your own head, your ability to stay calm and to lead, and your ability to protect without becoming paranoid, your ability to love without becoming weak, or to draw boundaries without becoming cruel. That's the real fight. That's the daily fight. And the reason I'm going to bring genders into this, and I'm bringing biblical truth into this, is because the modern world is trying to dissolve the very structure that makes families stable, right? It's trying to sand down men into harmlessness, and it's trying to turn women into men. And nobody ends up happy, right? Nobody ends up safe, and everybody ends up just angry, anxious, medicated, and then confused. So I just want to talk about safety and love and responsibility in a way that's going to cut through all this noise, right? I don't want to do a lecture or a sermon, just the truth, right? The way a man says it when he's trying to keep his people alive and sane. And I'm going to do it with a parable because, one, I love parables. They just slip past pride, right? One of the best lessons from Jesus, I think, man, is learning to think in parables. And this one's simple, and I think it's got some teeth. So I'm putting it together. Okay, so there's a coastal town, right? And the sea is their entire life. That's where the work comes from. That's where the food comes from. That's where the danger comes from. And, at the edge of this town on the sea, there's a lighthouse. And it's not some romantic postcard lighthouse, right? It's a working lighthouse, a warning system, a line in the dark that says, rock here, death here, turn now, right? So for generations, men, they kept that lighthouse maintained. They didn't debate whether it was judgmental. They didn't argue whether the lighthouse was inclusive. They didn't care if the rock's feelings were hurt. No, they just kept the damn light burning because they knew something. Hey, Paola Rodriguez, if you're really being kidnapped, 911, buddy. Now listen, I want to get back to the parable because the ocean doesn't care what you believe. The rocks don't care what you feel. Reality doesn't negotiate. So the lighthouse stands and ships, they adjust, right? Okay. So then a new council takes over the town, right? And they're soft-handed. They're image-obsessed people. They don't like the lighthouse because it makes the sea look dangerous. They say it's negative. They say it scares people. They say it's fear-based. So you know what these people do? They dim it. And just a little at first. They don't turn it off, right? Just make it a little dimmer. And the fishermen, they complain. But the council says, hey, relax. The ocean isn't that bad. You're being dramatic. So then they start putting, decorations over it, right? Filters, a softer glow, more welcoming. Then they reduce the budget, okay? So the lighthouse is having less maintenance, less fuel, less staffing, because now it's not a priority anymore. And one night, a storm rolls in hard, right? The kind of storm that eats confident men for breakfast. And a ship, it starts to come through the channel. And the captain is decent, and he's trying, right? The captain is not an evil man. He's not stupid. He's just fighting wind and current and darkness. And the lighthouse is too dim. And that ship, it hits the rock, and people die. Okay, so the town mourns, right? And they look for someone to blame, and the council says, well, who could have known? And the old men of the town, they just stand there quiet because they do know. They knew the whole time. They knew that the dimming, the warning light, that wasn't compassion. It was straight up negligence, okay? And that's the lesson, right? Love without truth is not love. Love that refuses to warn is not love. Love that refuses to lead is not love. And that is what I'm watching in the world right now, okay? We have dimmed the lighthouse. We've dimmed the warning systems. We've dimmed masculinity. We've dimmed our discipline. We've dimmed our responsibilities. We have dimmed the idea that men are supposed to be strong and women are supposed to be protected and cherished, and that children are supposed to be raised with stability, not experimentation. Okay, and now the storm is here, and everybody is acting shocked. So when I say awake, not woke, I'm saying stop letting the world dim your lighthouse. Be awake. See the rocks, name the rocks, and then steer away from the rocks. Teach your family where the rocks are. Now, I want to tie this lighthouse parable into Iran, right? A choke point like Hormuz, it's a rock field, right? It's a place where if pressure gets applied, the world gets affected. And what do naive people do? They do this. They shrug. They say, it's far away. They'll say, it doesn't matter. They say, oh, stop being dramatic. Come on, that's dim lighthouse talk. Awake men, we look at choke points and go, that's real. That's leverage. That can ripple into my life. I'm going to be steady about it. I'm not going to be panicked. I'm not going to be obsessed. I'm just going to be steady. Okay, so then, you tie it into the government shutdown. For instance, a government shutdown is not the end of the world, but It's a reminder that systems can stall, right? And if your entire life is built on the assumption that the system will always work smoothly, you know, you're living with your throat exposed. You're betting your family's peace on other people's competence. Come on, everyone. That's not leadership, okay? That's called outsourcing. And that right there, that's how you get surprised. Okay. So, what do awake men do, right? They build stability at the household level. They stop pretending that normal is a guarantee. They start training their bodies, they start training their minds, they start quietly prepping all the basics. You got to start building redundancy. And then you also have to build brotherhood. And you have to start leading your families like it's your damn job, because it is. Okay. Now I want to talk about a good man in a chaotic world, right? And I want to say it in a way that women are going to understand and that men are, I hope you respect. A good man is not a nice man, okay? A good man is a dangerous man under control. A man who could do harm, but instead chooses righteousness. A man who could dominate, but chooses service instead. A man who could stand in front of the storm without becoming the storm. In my experience, that's what women actually want, right? They might not say it in those words, but that's what safety is. It's not weakness, okay? It's controlled strength. And biblically, that's not controversial, okay? That's normal. If you look at Ephesians 5, it tells husbands to love their wife as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. That is not passive. That is not soft. That is called sacrificial leadership, okay? That's a man laying down his comfort, his ego, his selfishness, and he does it all to cover his wife in his own home. It also says that the husband is the head of the wife, as Christ is the head of the church. And I know, okay, in modern ears, that sounds like a siren, and people start like twitching at that. But headship is not tyranny. Headship is responsibility. If the ship hits the rock, right, the captain doesn't get to say, well, we were equal, so it's not my fault. No, the captain answers, okay? And a good husband is a captain who answers to God first. That's not domination. That's duty, right? And for women, come on, the Bible does not call you to be disposable. It calls you to be precious, right? You look at 1 Peter 3, right? It tells husbands to live with their wives in an understanding way as with someone weaker, since she is a woman, and to show her honor as a fellow heir of the grace of life. People freak out at the word weaker because they think it means value. Weaker, it's not value, it's vulnerability. You know, women, they bear children. Women are more vulnerable physically in most cases. I mean, women have different strengths, different instincts, different gifts, different burdens. And a man who uses that vulnerability against her is evil. A man who honors her and protects her, he's righteous. So when I'm talking about safety and love and responsibility, I'm not making up some sort of a philosophy here. I'm just describing what God built and laid out for us. Because men and women, we are not interchangeable parts. Okay, we don't have interchangeable parts. You were born in your body. That's the gender. You were given a biblical role. It's not interchangeable. But men and women, we are absolutely complementary with each other. And the world hates that because complementary design, that requires you to have humility. It requires roles. It requires duty and standards. And standards, I'm going to say this right here, standards make weak people angry. So now let me bring this down from theory into our daily fight, because this is where we all actually live, right? A good man in today's chaos does not make his wife the shock absorber for his own anxiety. You know, he doesn't bring the whole world's panic into the house and then dump it on the kitchen table when he gets home. No, he doesn't doom scroll and then start snapping at his kids because he's stressed about what he's seen. He doesn't use fear as his personality or turn prepping into paranoia or turn training into his ego. No, that man, he just becomes steady. And that steadiness is what love looks like when the wind is loud. So when I say like prepping, okay, I don't mean you go into a bunker and start fantasizing about collapse. No. I mean, you do what a responsible man does. You just slowly, quietly, steadily, you build basic margin, right? You build a little food buffer, stuff you actually eat, right? You build a water buffer. You keep the tank in your car from going below half. You keep basic supplies handled. Tighten your finances. Reduce the debt. You have to build a little breathing room because breathing room is freedom. And the reason you do it is not because you love fear. It's because you love your family. Because when pressure hits the system, the unprepared man, well, all of a sudden, he's dependent. And if you're dependent, that's a choke point in your life because dependency on something, that's leverage. I mean, if you want to understand leverage, stop staring at Iran for a second and look at your own life. If one paycheck controls your mood, that's leverage. If one habit controls your conscience, that's leverage. If one person's approval controls your own backbone, that's leverage. Hey, if you can't sleep at night without scrolling on your phone, that's leverage. And if your body is weak, again, same thing. How about your marriage being brittle? Also, leverage, right? And the world is full of people and systems that will happily apply pressure to your weak points. And it's not because they're cartoon villains, right? It's just because that's how this world works. So you have to build strength. You have to train, right? Training isn't vanity. Training is stewardship. Your body is a tool. Your mind is a weapon. Your spirit is the command center of it all. And if you leave those things untrained, you're basically just dimming your own lighthouse. You're telling the storm, go ahead, okay? And I don't mean you have to become some sort of elite athlete, right? I mean, you just have to become consistent. You got to lift, you have to walk, you have to stretch, work, sleep like it matters. You got to eat like an adult. And you stop living like you're waiting to be rescued, because men who wait to be rescued usually get rescued by something that, well, it owns them afterwards, right? Okay, so now brotherhood. This is the missing piece in men's lives. A lot of men are isolated, right? And they call that independence. Come on, guys, that's not independence. That's fragility. Ecclesiastes talks about, two being better than one, because if one fails, the other lifts him up. Okay, that's not friendship is fun. No, that's survival. A good man, he builds a circle, right? Not a crowd, not fans, not acquaintances, a circle. You got to find a few men that actually have standards, right? A few men who are going to actually tell you the truth and who will show up when it's inconvenient for them. Because when you're trying to be awake, the world will try to lull you back to sleep, right? And brotherhood, you guys, that's how we stay awake. Now, I want to make the awake, not woke line land in a way that's not just a slogan, okay? Awake means that you recognize reality even when it's uncomfortable. Yeah. And it means that you refuse to call rocks water just because it feels nicer. Awake means that you refuse to dim that lighthouse just to make other people feel cozy, right? And it means that you can love people and still tell them the truth. You can be compassionate. You can still have a boundary. You can be a Christian and still be strong. And I need to say this for the men who have been lied to by modern softness. Christianity does not require weakness, okay? It requires righteousness. It requires discipline, courage, self-control. It requires a man who can handle his emotions without being ruled by them. Because a man who could feel anger and not become a monster, A man who can feel fear and not become a coward, or who can feel desire and not become a slave, that is a warrior's faith. All right. So here's where this all keeps coming together in my head as I'm sitting here. So Iran touches a choke point because that's how power squeezes, right? Government dysfunction creates domestic choke points because, that's how leadership gets people squeezed. And then the question becomes, are you the kind of man who gets squeezed into compromise, or are you the kind of man who becomes steady under pressure? Hey, and women, are you building with a man who can stand? Okay. Or are you building with a man who collapses into moods? And men, are you leading with love, or are you just trying to be liked? Because, hey, being liked, that's cheap. It's cheap. Leading, that is expensive, okay? But it's expensive in the best way because the cost is your ego and the return is stability. So let's land this all now, right? Let's reel it in. Let's keep it biblical. Keep it a little fresh here. Let's look at James 1:22. It says, "But prove yourselves doers of the word and not merely hearers who delude themselves." That's awake, right? Hearers are asleep. Doers are awake. 1 Corinthians 16:13. "Be on the alert, stand firm in the faith, act like men, be strong." That verse does not apologize, okay? It's not soft. It's not asking for permission. Act like men. Be strong. It's not telling you to be violent, okay? It's telling you to be stable, to be steadfast, to be unmovable when the storm is screaming. Nehemiah 4:14. "Do not be afraid. Remember the Lord and fight for your brothers, your sons, your daughters, your wives, and your houses." That is not politics, okay? That is duty. That's the lighthouse. That's the captain. That's the man standing in the doorway while the storm hits the front porch. Okay, so here's where I land today, all right? And I want it to be simple enough so that, everyone can actually do something with it. Stop letting the world dim your lighthouse. Stop letting comfort talk you out of the truth. Stop letting fear talk you out of discipline. Stop letting the crowds talk you out of God's design for men and women. A good man is steady. A good man is strong and controlled. A good man loves sacrificially. A good man prepares quietly. A good man trains consistently. A good man builds brotherhood and puts God first, right? Not as a decoration, but as command. And a good woman, biblically, is not inferior. No, she's honored. She's protected. She's cherished. She is a partner in building a stable house. She's not a competitor for the captain's seat. You're sitting there. She's not a competitor. And when that structure is right, man, children feel that. The whole household breathes easier. They grow up with a sense of safety that isn't fake and based in fear. No, they grow up with a lighthouse that's so damn bright that it keeps them off the rocks. Now listen, if this hits you, if this is the kind of conversation you want more of, I need you to actually do something, right? Hit like, subscribe, turn on the notification bell, because I can see the views, but the views, they don't build a tribe, you guys. Subscribers build a tribe. And I'm building a tribe of awake men and women who want truth, discipline, safety, and biblical reality in a world that's trying to dim the lighthouse that we've got. So I want to hear this down in the comments. Tell me, what's the one area in your life where you feel the squeeze? Not a speech, not a performance, just name it. Because a man or woman who won't name the problem definitely can't fix it. All right, y'all. Glory to God. Walk the hard road hour. Stay solid. Thanks for listening.